Hello and welcome to the PuggoReborn channel. I'm PuggoRedemption, and today I'll be giving my top 10 most dreaded Battle Brothers enemies. PuggoReborn and I have both made a quick highlight video of our lists based on a longer discussion on the topic. If you want to catch the whole discussion, go ahead and check it out in the description below. For this list, I will present my honorable mentions and go through my top 10 dreaded enemies. To come up with my list, I use 3 criteria. These criteria are the encounter timeline, which is the period at which you meet the enemy. This will generally determine how well equipped your team is to combat the enemy when you first fight them. Number 2 is the danger level. This is the lethality of the enemy. The higher their lethal potential, the higher the danger score based on the 1 to 10 score line. And then number 3 is the tactics, which is how much does an enemy make you have to change your playstyle to be able to fight against them. And being that this is a dreaded enemies list, this is how they impact your playstyle in a negative way. That will determine how I rank them. Remember that our lists are subjective and reflect our personal experiences within the game. If you like my list or have critiques for it, let me know by leaving a comment in the comment section below. Also, if you like this sort of content, go ahead and subscribe to this channel for more Battle Brothers gameplay. Let's get on to my honorable mentions. So I have 3 honorable mentions, and they are the Unhold, the Orc Warriors, and Zweihanders from the Noble Armies. So one quick preface is, again, because we had a more detailed discussion on this, I'm going to be skipping the finer details behind honorable mentions and my rankings. So again, if you want to see that longer discussion, it will be in the description below. Getting on to my top 10 list, I'm starting with top 10, or the number 10 is Goblin Shaman. The Goblin Shaman, to put it out there real quick, I have a danger level of 6, and that might not sound high, but that's more because the Goblin Shaman fulfills a more supportive role. And that's what makes them really frustrating, is I think they're the perfect support for the goblins. They're always shifty, moving around you, and just puncturing you full of holes with their little bolas and arrows. And so when the Goblin Shaman uses their roots every turn, it's very encumbersome to try and fight your way through these roots to make your way to the goblins. And it's already hard enough, as I mentioned before, to hit them. And so Goblin Shamans just really stress me out when I'm having to fight against these goblins. And when it's late game, their weapons don't do a lot of damage. It adds up over time. And so I think Goblin Shamans do well with the roots. Plus, anybody you send alone or to dive at them, they also have that fly curse that'll just nuke the stats, I think, by 50% for all your stats. And that can easily turn front runners trying to break free from the group to take him out into just the pin cushion that all the goblins are going to turn on and kill instantly. And so danger level isn't 10, although the Goblin Shaman can't defend himself or fight or do like damage to you. I gave him a danger level of 6 because he does boost the other goblins around him to a degree that I'm actually, if it's a longer fight or I'm really struggling to get to the goblins, I'm never sure if I'm going to get away from a fight without losing someone. So that's why I gave him around the range of 6, because that's when I'm about unsure if I can survive with all my brothers by the end of the fight. So that's my number 10 Goblin Shaman. The number 9 is Lindworm. So Lindworms, for me, it's a clear danger level 1. They just, every time I fight against a Lindworm, I'm sure I'm going to lose a brother. And it's mainly because of their acid. Don't get me wrong, the Lindworm can do an absurd amount of damage to any brother if he hits, but the acid just really emphasizes that damage. Like, even when they're not hitting you and you're doing damage to the Lindworm, that acid is spraying out, it's hitting the brothers nearby, and it's ruining their armor to open up just a one-shot chance on any of the people around it. So again, like, I know that you can change your tactics around to fight a Lindworm, but I still feel like each time I face a Lindworm, whoever goes up to tank him is the sacrificial pawn for my group. The reason why Lindworm doesn't make it up higher in the list, though, is because when I find a Lindworm, it's usually I just run away. Like, I'm not forced to fight a Lindworm. So that encounter timeline criteria that I was mentioning is at play here, where it's like, I don't see him much in the game, and it's usually later on. And then even when I do, I can just wait. I can run away and wait till I feel like I'm better prepared to fight the Lindworm. So that's why it doesn't make it higher on my list. But moving on from there, I have number 8 is the Barbarian Chosen. Its danger level is 5. And that's purely because, again, when you're facing the Barbarian Chosen, for me, it's always in the later stages of the game when I have good gear. Nonetheless, they're in that range where I'm not 100% confident that I'll survive with all my players or my brothers by the end of the fight. Because the Barbarian Chosen, this is a thing for a lot of the Barbarian weapons, they have that absurdly high ignore armor damage, and it only takes 2 good shots with one of those OP weapons that it could just straight up through the armor kill one of your guys. And so I feel like Barbarian Chosen can end up, even though they have decent armor, they have good weapons, and it's in the late game where you're also all set and prepared for them. In those fights, you still have the chance to just straight up negate all the armor you've built on all your guys because of those really absurd barbarian weapons. So Barbarian Chosen makes it on my list at number 8, which kind of goes into number 7, which is my Barbarian Reavers. Now, even though the Barbarian Reavers are a level lower than a Barbarian Chosen, you find them right away in the game. That's the big thing. Like, that encounter timeline is right away in the game. You're finding the Barbarian Reavers. They're kind of like the Brigand Raiders early on in the game. They still are able to come in with those, like the 2-handed mace weapon with the skull and whatnot. Those weapons that have the 50% and 60%, I think, for some of them, damage through armor. And so much like the Barbarian Chosen, like, I have a danger level of 6 for the Barbarian Reavers, just because without that armor, I feel like I'm better able to kill them before they get into the extended fights with them. However, there's still that chance for those powerful weapons to just straight 2-shot my characters. And so I'm always just wary of Reavers early on in the game. I don't like facing Barbarians because, again, those weapons are just so strong. So that's why the Reavers are a little bit higher than the Chosen. Again, it's just that encounter timeline, but they make up my 7 spot on my list. Number 6, I have the Ancient Legionaries, which that might be a massive shocker to some people, but I want to throw in something else. I don't really care about the Ancient Legionaries so much, but the ones with the polearms specifically are the ones I want to reference as my number 6 spot on my list. Much like the Barbarian Reavers and the Chosen, they have very potent damage capabilities with that spear. And much like most of the game, all the backliners, the polearm users that you'll go against, are generally the more scary, or like the scariest members that you have to face, just because they have absurd damage capabilities. Now, the reason why the Ancient Legionaries with the polearms make it so high on my list is because they usually come with a supporting class of a long front line of Ancient Legionaries who are just going to sit there and shield wall. Yes, they might not do a lot of damage to you, but just about every turn they're always attacking once and shield walling. And so that front line is just so hard to punch throughout most of the game. And if you can't punch through that line, you're just giving the Ancient Legionaries with the polearms in the back a lot of time to hit you down. And like I said, even with armor, these weapons are powerful. Almost all the polearms are dangerous. So I gave the Legionaries a danger level of 6. Again, I think they're about as lethal as the Reavers, but the reason they make it up into this list is if you're struggling to get through their front line, they can very, very well take out any of your brothers. It just, if they can get enough time, and like I said, they have the undead are the perfect group of characters to give them enough time to put out their damage. So that's my number 6. Number 5, and I loathe this class, and honestly I question, this is the one that I feel like I can move up and down just because I hate it a lot, but it's the Brigand Marksman. Now the Brigand Marksman gets a danger level of 4, which is upper end of, I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it through the fight with all my brothers, and just under the point at which I'm like, yes, I'm going to lose a brother in this fight. And that's mainly because you find the Brigand Marksman early on in the game, and they are just absurdly accurate. I'm looking at the stats on the website, and they don't say it has a lot, the Brigand Marksmen have a lot of ranged attack, but I have played this game for a while, and I guarantee you, when they're nailing me consistently in the middle of the night, I'm just mad. It's like, there's no way you can possibly tell me that the stats on the fandom, the wiki for Battle Brothers, is correct. These guys hardly ever miss. And I purposely even fight them, like if I ever have to face Brigand Marksman, especially early on, I'm always waiting till nighttime to do it. And they're still hitting me consistently in the nighttime. So that's why it makes my number 5 position. I just hate this class, because no matter what, they're always just on point with their shots. So number 4, I have the Necromancer. Necromancer makes this list probably kind of like the Goblin Shaman. He's just the perfect support for the undead. He has a danger level of 5, and this is primarily because early on in the game, which you can find Necromancer right off the bat in the game, but early on in the game, if you ever face the undead, there is a massive difference between a regular ragtag bunch of undead you're facing compared to a team of undead with a Necromancer. The point that I want to get across is the amount of fatigue that facing a Necromancer in the early game requires can straight up destroy your team. And so early on, the fact that it's hard enough to fight through these undead as they're rising on their own and they have a lot of health, but when you have them consistently rising up and being able to attack you multiple times on a turn because of a Necromancer, like early game, that's a big deal. And so if I'm facing a Necromancer early on, before I get an archer who can pick him off, I'm honestly not sure that I can pull out the fight with all my characters. So that's why he has a danger level of 5. It's just he makes early game fighting against the undead very tricky because of that massive amount of fatigue required to last through the entirety of the fight and to get to him. So that's my number 4. Geist is my number 3. They are in a similar position as Necromancer, the perfect kind of, what's it called? Kind of like the cheerleader, except this one screams at you. But the perfect screaming cheerleader for the undead. And they just round out the horror that you're supposed to feel when you're facing these corpses that are rising up out of the ground. They have a danger level of 5, much like the Necromancer, and that's because, again, you face them right away in the early game. Like, they're always prevalent throughout the entirety of the game. And when you do fight them, even early on, usually you're early on, I just want to avoid them, but from early on to even the late game, all it takes is for one fight to have bad RNG that say you have rally the troops. If that doesn't work, you can straight up lose the game. I've had a lot of runs just completely end where it's like, for a couple of fights beforehand against Geist, I'm flying through them, my rally the troops is working, and I'm just destroying them quickly and finishing the fight afterwards. But then a couple fights after facing the guys, it took one fight for everyone, like that rally the troops call, to fail, and everyone's just running around killing themselves. Like, Geist can straight up instantly end any run. And albeit it's less so in the later stages of the game, it's still something that I fear. And so, again, they have danger level 5 just because, for me, Geists are a coin toss. If you're able to rally the troops well, the fights are very manageable. If you can't, it's just done. So that's why I have Geist number 3. Number 2 is Necrosavants. Necrosavants are a danger level of 3 because they generally always get close to or killing one of my characters. They are able to shift around the battlefield, so you can't like overwhelm them because they'll just teleport to the other side. And then they always go for the weaker or the outlier brothers in your group. And so they pick their targets well. They have high damage. They have the bleed ability with their cleavers. And then they're also really shifty in the terms of not just teleporting around, but they're very hard to hit. They have very good melee defense. And on top of that, by the time you knock them down low enough that you can almost kill them, they have the 9 lives to just last one more turn. And so whenever I face Necrosavants, especially if it's early on and I don't have hard or like heavy armor, I'm just hoping that I can minimize the amount of people they kill, because they are extremely lethal. And like I said before, they go for the weakest members of your group or the people that are out of place. So Necrosavants, always a dreaded enemy when I face them. They make my number 2 position. And then finally, this character, my number 1, I knew right away, as soon as I had to make this list, there was never a doubt in my mind. It was, all right, I'm starting at number 2 and going down from there, because number 1 will never change until the producers actually address this character, because I think this is the most broken piece of garbage programming that they have in the game. I don't know how they haven't touched this character since they put it out, because it's just straight up broken. It's not healthy gameplay. It's just awful to face. And that's the Hexen. The Hexen, I hate them. And to the point, like, I've played this for a while. I could probably count the number of Hexen battles on my hand, or my 2 hands, that I've had out of the entirety that I played the game. Precisely because I refuse to fight these things. They are terrible to go against. They have no cooldown on their Hex, which is stupid. I've had fights where I've gone to the Hexen, I'm just waiting for her to remove her Hex from one of my guys so I don't kill them. And she'll sit there, and I remember there was a fight where I went over 10 turns waiting for her to just forget to use Hex on one of my guys. That's stupid. She has Charm. She can cast Charm every turn, sometimes can control multiple people. That's stupid. The Charm also, like, it lasts for multiple turns, and it's very hard to overcome. Like, I've had, even the late game, it's almost like a 90% success rate for just changing my guys over, turning them into her own weapons. And especially when you're raising the game to have, or you're playing the game to raise the best of the best brothers, the most lethal mercenaries in all the land. And in a second, those prized soldiers that you created are turning against you and slaughtering your own lines. That is so frustrating to have to deal with. And it's like, there's not a lot of play or counterplay. I've seen people talk about like bringing just like the basic clubs, the wooden sticks or whatever, and just going naked in the battle and just making sure your guys can't kill each other, but you can stun her and then beat her down from there. That is such an awful way to have to deal with the Hexen. Such an awful way. I've even played with archers trying to just shoot her out from afar. and she'll just charm my archers without fail. And then what makes it worse is, like, if it's just one Hexen, you can generally deal with her. She isn't that bad. But if there's multiple Hexen, or they bring enemies in to just kind of bodyguard or just hold down your people, your brothers, this makes the Hexen a danger level 1 for me, because there is no way you're going through those battles facing multiple unholds or a ton of webnecks at the same time trying to hold back your own star players on your team. And on top of that, fighting your way to the Hexen, on top of that, making sure you kill her when she doesn't have one of your guys hexed. On top of that, she generally charms the people who make it closest to her. Like, there is so much bullcrap that comes in the form of the Hex in this game that, again, I refuse to play against her, because I can't stand this character, and that's why she's the #1 most dreaded enemy for me. And that's it for my top 10 most dreaded Battle Brothers enemies. If you want to see Reborn's top 10 list, the link will be in the description below. Let us know what top 10 lists you want to see for our future videos in the comments section below. For now, I'll see you in the next video.